Hi everyone, today we will be unveiling the shocking secrets of non-Jerusalem temples from the First Temple period. These temples were state-sanctioned, potentially state-sponsored or subsidized, and within the promised land of Israel. Many people have raised objections to these temples, calling them idolatrous and unbiblical. And there is some truth to that, but with a twist that will change your worldview. So, watch till the end so you don't miss out on this information found nowhere else in such a clean and compiled format. Our adventure today starts in the depths of southern Judea. Initially designed as an agricultural settlement in the northern reaches of the Negev, by the time of the divided monarchy, it was a fortress town under the auspices of the king of Judea. Specifically chosen to protect the Judean foothills from Edomite incursion, this fortress was the first line of defense, and not untested. Multiple iterations of the fortress were destroyed in massive fires, and messages were found requesting men for a preemptive attack on Edomite invaders. 50 men were requisitioned from Arad to fend off the invaders at Ramat Negev, but they would not go like their fathers had. The sanctuary of God was not in Arad when they left, nor was the ark with them in Ramat Negev when they arrived. They still celebrated the new moons, still knew God, and even proselytized. But it wasn't the same. So, to the good old days of the Temple of God in Tel Arad. Standing at 3 times their present height after reconstruction, the walls of Tel Arad were formidable, but their greatest defense was inside. While stylistic dissimilarity exists between the first temple and the Temple at Arad, notably the room layout and adornment of the temple retains the key components of all contemporary Near Eastern temples of the time. In biblical language, these are the Hekal and the Bir, more commonly known as the courtyard and the Holy of Holies. While the altar at Arad is isolated in a corner in contrast to the layout of the Tabernacle and Jerusalem temples, the true controversy lies in the Holy of Holies. Critics pose 2 points and a bonus point that's super crazy as to why this temple to the one true God was actually an idolatrous shrine. Criticism 1 is based on a poor reading of the biblical text. Deuteronomy 12 verses 3 through 6, speaking of the Canaanites, the prior inhabitants of the land, says that the Israelites must destroy the altars and assorted worship items of the prior inhabitants. It further instructs them to go to the place where God chooses to be worshipped and worship him there. Many Christians erroneously insert Jerusalem in place of the phrase, the place where the Lord your God chooses out of all your tribes to put his name. Before Jerusalem housed the temple of God, the tabernacle migrated through the desert and eventually was kept at Shiloh in the territory of Ephraim. Jerusalem was a pagan city until the time of King David when he took it from the Jebusites. Furthermore, despite modern renderings of the Bible, it was anciently accepted to build valid temples to God outside of the land of Israel. More on that in my prior Yahwist temples video. While scholars agree that the Bible only allows one central shrine, it does permit subordinate temple complexes, especially for those unable to regularly visit Jerusalem. Later religious commentary, however, railed against inclusion and acceptance of these outlying groups within a temple-based religious system, forcing them to adopt a religious philosophy and end local temple practice under threat of becoming a heretic. So criticism 1 is a poor argument that relies on misreading the scriptures. Now that I have that off my chest, let's move on to the second criticism, idol worship at the temple. This accusation stems from the standing stones found inside the Holy of Holies, although they do not appear to contain iconography. This lack of icons is noted by Dr. Medinger in a 1995 publication examining ancient Near Eastern iconography, which lends itself to criticisms of the idea that the citizens of Arad worshipped other gods in the temple to Adonai. If other gods were worshipped there, then they were worshipped there without a trace. The standing stone found in the Holy of Holies could have served a plethora of uses besides receiving worship. Just because it could have been an idol does not mean that it was. The bonus point that makes the internet go bonkers is the ritual use of cannabis at Arad. Yes, they collectively did weed. Short disclaimer, I don't encourage that activity, but I can understand why the priests of Arad would have used it. Studies have shown that cannabis use can help to manage PTSD and alleviate pain. If enough is used, cannabis can create numbness. It has also been used in drugs to help calm and focus users. Essentially, the priest class of Arad was drugging a population in dystopia and creating enhanced soldiers. While I can't speak to the long-term effectiveness of this strategy, this was a legitimate use of cannabis. Most people at Arad during the period seem to have lived inside the city walls for protection. There was no telling when the nearby Edomites would swarm into the valley and start a bloody homicide, much less when the imperialist forces of Egypt or Assyria would make a play for the strategically located fortress of Arad. This, of course, would have led to stress and fear. The priests of Arad, being the best equivalent to doctors in the ancient Judean kingdom's far south stronghold, seem to have filled the medical needs of the Judean soldiers quite adeptly. While I could argue that these priests were medical visionaries far beyond their time, there are also less scrupulous explanations, such as was attempting to commune with the divine through drugs, something condemned in the book of Revelation. However, I will give the priests the benefit of the doubt here. Their cannabis burning might even have been state-sponsored to improve the quality of the Judean military. Using drugs to enhance military personnel is not unheard of even within the third world of today. Back in high school, I read a book about child soldiers in Sierra Leone. One of the ways they were turned into soldiers was through drug usage. But that's an aside. There is no literary or archaeological evidence to prove that medicinal military enhancement ever happened at Arad, but it seems plausible enough. So overall, the shrine has some odd features, but it's not inherently idolatrous. In fact, there is both an absence of evidence for idol worship in the Arad temple and a recognition of the God of the Bible in the archaeological record of Arad. Going back further though, there was a separate high place in Stratum 11, while Stratums 10 and 9 boasted the Jerusalem-like temple of God Most High. Despite this self-reform towards a pure Yahwism, the scholarly consensus is that this temple fell prey to the reforms of Hezekiah. After all, it was Adonai's altars that Hezekiah tore down. But when you break nice things, you can't have nice things. The biblical key to understanding what happened at Arad comes from the mouth of a goon of the king of Assyria, Sennacherib by name, when he was besieging the world-renowned temple of Jerusalem. But he forgot just one thing. No enemy blasphemes God and his people and gets away with it. So the temple at Jerusalem stood, but the temple of Arad fell to ruins. Climbing up from the ashes of Arad and rising to the north through the Judean foothills, we come to our next temple. Rising high above Lower Judea, the holy hill sits majestically, surrounded by fertile agricultural lands and adorned by the temple of God, its crown jewel. But this is not Jerusalem. Built in the style of the first temple, the temple of Solomon and David, of Josiah and Hezekiah, and of Syria and the Hittites, this temple lacks nothing, including a functional altar of uncut stones. Every morning, the sun pays reverence to the glory of God inside by illuminating the stones of the temple and casting its bright rays before the Holy of Holies as a profound yet simple offering. This temple had a Holy of Holies, but something more looms behind this once glorious temple. While the temple at Moza was thought to be dedicated to the God of Israel, a cracked stone could shatter this theory. Discovered in 2021, this piece of stone was found reused in a wall of the Tel Moza temple complex. The lead archaeologist on the dig, Shua Kishilevitz, asserts that this was a reverent reuse of the principal object of worship at the site before renovation. The legs form part of a depiction thought to be Baal, and while it's possible the impressions on the stone are natural, it is more probable that the cloud rider hovering over this temple is not the Abrahamic god, but Baal, the storm god. For now, this temple remains shrouded in a fog of mystery, but one day we may know what this great temple was doing less than 10 miles from Jerusalem, contemporary to its temple and the 700 wives of Solomon. Could Tel Moza be a high place he made for one of the 700? Let me know what you think in the comments below. But getting back to the topic at hand, to reach our final temple, we cross over the Jordan and head for the golden sands of the Promised Land. But this is no late-night bash in Aqaba. Here in Khirbet al-Mukayyat, the only noise you'll find in the rule of the Umayyad kings is the wind whistling through the desert. Except one fatal night, reminiscent of the 9th of Ab. Tonight, the cool desert air is treated with the sound of sabers. Mesha, king of Moab, has invaded. Ataroth, Jahaz, Horonaim, Nebo. He takes them one by one. The great cities of Gad burn and are desecrated, and so too is the temple of God in Nebo. The fate of its finery is unknown. It may not even have had an incense burner worth looting, much less any other notable gold. We know, however, that this temple had vessels, which Mesha, king of Moab, hauled before Chemosh, his idol, thus desecrating the holy vessels of God. Having pots, pans, and a line in the Mesha stele are all fine and good. However, not much is actually known about this temple. Some theorize that it was an important central shrine where the 12 tribes would send delegates to crown Hashem their God. This theory relies on the blessings that Moses gave, describing pre-established attributes rather than future destinies of the tribe, which runs contrary to the gist of the passage as a whole, while fitting with some secular theories of biblical formation. This theory also depends upon a tenuous, unattested textual variant in the OG Hebrew of the verse, requiring sizable misspellings. So maybe God in their temple at Nebo ceremonially enthroned God Almighty on a yearly basis. However, I am personally unconvinced of this notion. What this temple was, we may never know. Sitting in the territory of Jordan, near the northwestern Dead Sea, the proposed rough location of the town the temple was linked to is unlikely to be excavated. Showing signs of early Jewish occupation of the region is the last thing any Arab government would support. Additionally, the stone deposits and boulders that fill the nearby wilderness make sure the temple's ruins could never be distinguished from just another geological feature. This temple is lost, but it will always have a definite place in the minds of those who duly love the Bible and Near Eastern archaeology. And while we may never know if it was a Baal shrine or a true temple of God, the temples that lay to its south are far more interesting. I'm going to be very specific about what I'm talking about and use the divine name here. Across the border inside of Edom, in areas that were fully ethnically Gentile, there were temples to the one true God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.